It's lovely to see so many of you turning out on a miserable December evening. And I think what we've got to speak about this evening will bring a lot of cheer to all our hearts, because I think myself, the spiritual side of Ayurveda, the absolute essence and heart, is what most of us are interested in and is what's brought all of us to Ayurveda. So this evening, we've got a special treat for you. Tomaz Mueller, who's a long-standing practitioner, herbalist in Ayurveda and Western herbs, is going to talk about spirit attachments and how they can affect your well-being. Bhuta Vidya, as it's known in Sanskrit, and energy healing. So this is a real treat that we've got for all of you, and I know that myself anyway and the rest of the board are really excited that Tomaz is going to present this subject. So a preliminary, please will you turn off your mobile phones and keep the questions coming into the chat box. If I've said that wrong, Carolina, please, please interrupt. And well, it's 8 o'clock, so you can start, Tomaz, please. Thank you very much for doing this.
Okay, so thank you so much, Angela, for welcoming everybody, and thank you to the APA for allowing me to share one of my favorite subjects here during the webinar. Now, just to build a little bit of context, I have been in the field of Ayurveda almost, I was thinking about it today, almost for about 4 decades, and it's been quite a while. And for many, many years in the past, I was thinking there are clients of ours, they are patients of ours, they do everything according to the book. Like they have proper lifestyle, they follow nutritional advice, they take the herbs, they do any other lifestyle practices, and yet we cannot shift some of the symptoms that they actually present themselves with. So that has led me to diving deeper into the energetic realm and the understanding that there are aspects within our field, within our systems and bodies, that we may not directly see that actually influence our well-being. And this is the topic of tonight, Bhuta Vidya, the knowledge about Bhutas. I am sharing here a journey that I have undergone, because when I did my training in Ayurvedic medicine, we didn't really touch upon Bhuta Vidyas. And it is basically after my own experience, after exploring my own training, I looked at, so there must be an aspect within the Ayurvedic classical text that looks at Bhutas, and that's when the subject basically really made much more sense to me. So some years ago, I trained in a technique which is called Soul-Centered Healing Hypnosis, and basically it is a practice where I take people into theta brainwave state, into a relaxed space, and through a guided process, we look at energetic attachments, we look at past lives, we look at how these energetic attachments, past lives, ancestral patterns can affect our well-being. And when we go back, and I'm referring to my little script and my little notes here, I don't want to miss very important points here. So if we are going back, that actually Bhuta Vidya reminds us on of these unseen energies and influences and entities or imprints that can affect our physical, emotional, mental, and energetic state of well-being. So these spirit attachments, what do I mean by that? I refer here to subtle presences, and we will go a little bit deeper into how they relate to the doshas and from an Ayurvedic perspective, and this again hasn't been written down anywhere, at least I couldn't find, but certain doshic types are more susceptible to attracting certain entities or energy presences. So basically, um, those subtle presences, they latch onto our energy field and they take often advantage of emotional wounds, trauma that we may carry, or weakened energetic boundaries. So while modern science very much overlooks these influences, um, both ancient Ayurvedic texts and more contemporary healing approaches and practices actually affirm their impact. So recognizing bhutas and learning how they release them and how to release them basically can be a very profound step forward when it comes to improving one's well-being. So let's rewind a little bit. I want to just tap briefly into how do these bhutas actually attach in the first place? How does this happen? So, and here I would like to think that it is much more scientific than many of us might believe, because there's so much information about color and the influence of colors on our well-being, the color spectrum. It will make sense in a second, so please bear with me. So what I'm saying here is our human eye is able to only perceive about 40% of the visible spectrum. So beyond the colors that we see lies a vast array of frequencies and vibrations. And each color that we perceive corresponds to very specific frequency. So just stay with me. It will make sense, I promise you. So from the slower, more grounding energy of the red to the more higher, vibrant, faster vibrations of the violet and indigo, for example. When we think about colors and how they affect us, we can borrow from the sister signs of yoga, because we all know the root chakra is represented as the color red, the sacral as orange, and so on. So what I believe, or what I sort of feel when I felt into understanding color and looking at colors with regards of how they can make us susceptible to attachment of those entities, let me see if I can share a little bit of this diagram here. Basically, we have the full spectrum of the colors from the dense lower vibrational red frequency to the higher vibrational of the violet and indigo. So that's the visible spectrum of color that we perceive. Now, why am I showing you this? For two reasons. I believe that energies and entities, they move around in the lower frequency range. When we talk about lower frequency, we talk about radio waves, we talk about infrared, for example. And a typical example, and Sue, you might remember this, when we were living in Devon, we had Sue's dogs visiting us, and we were basically dog sitting quite often. And sometimes the dogs, out of the blue, were jumping up while they were sitting with us on the sofa, and they started barking. And there was no obvious reason. There was no noise, no sound, anything that we could perceive. But I do believe that animals, especially dogs and cats, are able to observe what goes on in the infrared, where are we? In the infrared spectrum here. And I do believe those denser energies or bhutas that we talk about, they swirl around in those energetic frequencies. So now, what does this have to do with healing and well-being? The way I see it is we are all conscious beings that vibrate at a specific frequency with a specific vibrational energy. And I do believe, and please feel free to disagree, we can have a conversation about this, but I do believe we have one common origin. You may call it source, you may call it God, or whatever you want to call it. You may call it light. So pure the pure essence of light is present within every single person of us. And as we grow energetically, as we grow and expand our awareness, more and more of our vibration and frequency changes. So we bring in these higher frequency colors. So when we look at our physical existence, as it has been defined from the yoga tradition, we are looking at the 7 chakras and its respective colors. So if you look at those 7 chakras, that means we have the entire spectrum of the rainbow colors present within our physical. When I say physical, I don't necessarily mean the physical body alone, but for me, the physical means the more denser 3D aspects of our existence. So what happens now when you put all those colors in its purest form, the red, the orange, the yellow, the green, the blue, the indigo, and the lilac or white, when you put them together, we create a uniform color, which is white. So basically, white has got the entire spectrum of color within its own, as fractals can actually be directed into any of those colors. So basically, white has got the full spectrum of the rainbow colors contained in there. So why is that relevant? This is where it becomes really interesting. So trauma, emotional turmoil, any kind of lingering fears, for example, they contribute to distorting some of those beautiful, pure, vibrant colors. So think about that, mudding up the color scheme, which basically leads to dimming the frequency, dimming our own frequency. It makes sense, for example, if I were to give you an example, if you think about what shall we choose? Let's have a look at the root center, for example. The root center is which color? It's the color red, okay? So very often what I find in my practice when I work with those denser energies, when I work with those energetic attachment, that very often when people have got an imbalance that is related to the root center, when I say imbalance, it could be a physical imbalance, but it also could be a psycho-emotional or energetic imbalance. What that means is, for example, there could be a trauma where they all of a sudden, out of the blue, have lost their home. They have lost their house, their money, because the root center is all about stability, feeling safe. And what I've found is there are certain types of entities that naturally attach to that center if there is some weakening happening. For example, they are very likely to be flooded with parasites. So think about intestinal parasites on a physical level. Give another example, choosing the sacral area, okay? Sacral, color orange. Very often what I find is when people have a poor relationship with their mother, okay? Poor relationship with their mother. There is some kind of trauma, some kind of emotional discrepancy, lower vibrational frequency that lodges in the sacral center, in the orange center, and that could, for example, manifest as addictions. It could manifest as sexual addictions. We are not here necessarily talking about the heavier stuff, for example, sexual abuse. But what I'm trying to give or bring across here is that life circumstances, life events contribute to a dimming of the color. And basically, what I'm saying here is lowering our frequency. And because our frequencies are lowered, speaking in Ayurvedic terms, our pranic life force is lowered, our ojas is diminished, and that creates a perfect breeding ground for those external influences and energies to come in. I will go in a second and look at the Ayurvedic definition of bhutas and relate it to the doshas. So basically, what I'm saying here is when I look at the client, and especially somebody who I feel would benefit from an energetic clearing, and those energetic clearings, very often, they go back lifetimes. They are linked to ancestral patterns. And to be honest, please correct me if I'm wrong, there's no Ayurvedic herb, there's no lifestyle practice as such that actually is able to look at ancestral patterns, mental patterns. Yes, you can all work with the mind. We can move from a Rajasic mind and bringing it back into a Sattvic mind. But these patterns, thought patterns, energetic processes. Sometimes these are curses, word curses, for example. People are very, very reluctantly these days still, or very often people feel quite uncomfortable when I talk about entities and energies. To be quite honest, we are always exposed to external influences that latch onto our auric field. It could be, for example, when somebody undergoes surgery, okay? Surgery, as we know from an Ayurvedic perspective, the way I see it, is giving an opportunity where we have some fractures in our auric field, okay? So, and these fractures within our auric field are a perfect entry point gateway for some of those energies and entities to actually come in. Angela, do I make sense? Where are you? Just to ensure that it's clear from what I've so far shared.
You do make sense. And I was just thinking about Anubis, who's the god of the underworld. He was the head of in the labyrinth during the ancient Egyptian rituals. And one of the things that you could do, and what they did when under anesthesia, when you went into the lower realms in the underworld, to the judgment actually, was to carry a statue of Anubis, a small one, a small, even a picture of Anubis would be
Mhm,
helpful
mhm.
in this particular case.
Yeah, yeah.
It's
I
firing up
mean,
all sorts of things in my mind, but carry on. You're doing really well. So
yeah,
one person has got a question. It's Ines, relevant to what you're saying. Could a primary pain syndrome also be caused by spirit attachments in the root chakra, causing pain throughout the body?
absolutely. And I'm not having enough time to go into sharing some of the cases that I've worked with, but I've had a lady who has come to me for a soul-centered healing hypnosis session. She suffered with chronic back pain, and she had done everything she could. She had temporary relief of the back pain through some of the treatments that she has done. And basically, after the during the Soul-Centered Healing Hypnosis session, what actually happened was that we went into past life regression, and as part of a past life scenario, she was stabbed in the lower back and carried that memory throughout various lifetimes. And by actually going in and for her to visually um, link again to that energetic reminiscence of memory that was there, her back pain disappeared, and it just disappeared. And I have been actually speaking to her about a couple of days ago, and this goes back a year, and she said it has never returned. So to answer the question, yes. So going back to what you said, Angela, what pops in my mind is that in the ancient Egyptian times, they embalmed children with frankincense, okay? Because frankincense essential oil was known to ward off any evil spirits, any kind of parasites, and improve the immunity of a child. So there is evidence there. But what I like about the fact is taking the angle of the colors, the color spectrum, because that to me makes sense. Giving another example, a lot of those heavier demonic energies, they often attach to the throat center. So throat chakra, any problems related to thyroid, for example, the difficulties to communicate, to express, you may find people, they may start talking and all of a sudden their voice goes all crankly and they can't really express what they want to say. These are quite heavy throat energies and demonic energies that are actually attached to the throat center. And by actually clearing that, you not only clear any kind of psycho-emotional symptoms, but you can also support healing of any of the organs and organ systems within this particular area of the body. So what I want to touch upon now is another fascinating observation I have made. And again, you don't necessarily, I don't know, I at least couldn't find any backup from an Ayurvedic science, Ayurvedic classical perspective, but very often we have people in our lives that we consider energy parasites. Basically, vampires that sap up, they just completely suck off our energies. We feel completely exhausted in their presence and we feel wiped out. And what I have observed, let's put it that way, by at least, I think, 400 or 500, at least about 300 to 400 cases that I have done with the Soul Center Healing over the years, is that I would describe those people borrowers. And let me explain what I mean by that. What I mean here is they have, in one way, shape, or form or the other, some emotional trauma, some crack in the auric field in a particular center. Let's take, for example, what comes to my mind? Solar plexus. Let's move up the energy scale. Solar plexus, what is it? It stands about power, personal power, strength, and so on. So what I found is those energy vampires, they very often have a murky, muddy color of yellow and a weakness within the within the solar plexus area. Now, the fascinating bit there is subconsciously or consciously, and here we also touch upon narcissistic behavior, because I find narcissists have very much the same pattern here. There is a weakening of the energy within the solar plexus. Like, think about it, the yellow becomes all murky, browny, muddy, ugly looking. And they need to, in order to function, compensate for that murkiness of the solar plexus area by actually latching out onto someone else. So basically, they often not only have been are not only the abuser, but this is when the abused becomes the abuser. So what I'm saying here is they need to compensate for their lack of strength within the solar plexus, and they go and become a bully, and they sap off, they basically live off someone else's energetic blueprint. So basically, in summary, before I move on and tie it back into Ayurveda and the doshas and go a little bit into different types of entities, by acknowledging that these color frequencies that we see, using practices to keep those energetic frequencies, those vibrations in its purest way, can help to heal any trauma, and also restoring purity and strength to our internal spectrum of colors makes us less susceptible to opportunities of those entities that can come in, and basically it makes us less susceptible to energetic vampirism. Wow, this sounds quite dramatic, but I like that word, energetic vampirism. Um, so, saying all that, laying the foundation, now let's have a look briefly of the different types of Bhutas that we know from the classical texts and their characteristics, and how they can be. Okay, how I need to own this, because like I said, it is purely based on observation and experience, where I have observed that certain doshas are susceptible to certain energetic attachments. So for example, Bhuta Vidya, the knowledge of Bhutas, identifies primary types. I think it's about 5 primary types of Bhutas, and each represents a specific disturbance in the mind and in the energetic field. Now, often, what pops in my mind here is often Bhutas are being recognized in Ayurveda when it comes to Manasa Roga, so diseases of the mind, okay? I feel, and again, this is just sharing what I feel and believe, that probably 50% of the people that are admitted into mental institutions, mental hospitals, could actually be helped with if our system would understand the necessity and the existence of bhutas, those energetic attachments, within the field of those people. So why I'm saying this is because there is still a lot of stigma around it. People don't really like to talk about bhutas, but there are various types of bhutas. If you go into the classical text, you look at, for example, Gandharvas. So the description of the Gandharvas is celestial beings associated with music, creativity, and the arts. They are traditionally seen as positive forces, but they can cause disturbances when their energy basically becomes imbalanced. So, how does that manifest? It can manifest in obsessive creative urges or an inability to channel creativity constructively. All right. Difficulty in grounding oneself in the now reality, leading to detachment or almost like escapism, And Vata types are very much prone to Gandharva disturbances due to their natural creative nature and their ungrounded nature. So, then what the other kind of types that we are looking at is what is called Pisachus. I hope I pronounced this correctly. Pisachus, which basically is linked to demonic entities, linked to base desires and negative emotions like greed, anger, jealousy, addiction. Those thrive in a low frequency environment. They're feeding off emotional and energetic distortions. Just let's rewind briefly. What I found is that with the Vata constitutional type, they are very much prone to attract um, to attract minions. Minions within the entity realm are considered those entities that basically follow instructions by the bigger, higher, more demonic beings. Okay, so because Vata is so influenceable, so kind of its changeable nature, Vata constitutions very often they have entities which can be called minions, that basically follow instructions by other higher demonic energies. Whereas Pitta Pitta people very often are being targeted by the big guys. Um, I don't want to use any of those words here, but when I say big guys, the heavy demonic entities, and you can do your own research on that. Because, or just guess why? Because Pittas, they are very determined. They can be very focused. Once they are being taken over, they do anything possible to basically serve um, what I would like to call their master. Okay, so within the Bhutas of the Vedas, Pisachus, those fall under the demonic entities that are linked to base desires. Pitta people, very often, they have entities within their energetic field that are linked to addictions, any kind of addictions, particularly sexual addictions, drug and alcohol addictions. I find Pitta people, when you face somebody that presents themselves with an addictive problem, with an addictive nature, it is usually a Pitta constitution because they are heavily infested with those higher ranking demonic energies that basically live in the lower frequency realm, that live in the spectrum down here, the infrared and radio wave spectrum that we can't see, but our animals, for example, very often are able to see. So that can manifest in intense anger, jealousy, grief, uncontrollable addictions, um, and this is very much what I find Pitta types are, with their fiery and ambitious nature, are being targeted. They are more susceptible to those type of entities when it comes to presenting themselves in a clinical environment. Then we're looking at Bhutas. Bhutas in general, when the classical texts refer to Bhutas, what I mean here is earthbound spirits. Okay? Earthbound spirits could be deceased ones that float around. They haven't quite realized that they have left their physical body, and they attach themselves to people like us when we are vulnerable, because they want to keep on living through us. Okay, living their you can say these are ghosts that remain attached to the material world, and they haven't actually been able to move on. And often what they do, or how they manifest within somebody that presents themselves in a clinical setting, they basically often are people that are very fearful, they are very unease, insecure, they feel quite depleted energetically, and it feels often that they are haunted by their past memories and their past relationships. So guess what? Kapha people, because of their compassionate nature, they are often they can often attract those bhutas, those earthbound spirits, because Kapha is very compassionate, very kind of loving and caring, and without knowing, they basically allow their physical existence for those ghosts or earthbound spirits to keep on living their patterns, let's put it that way. Then we have what is called pretas, Pretas. I think it's called. These are more hungry spirits that are trapped in a state of unfulfilled desires or cravings. It is just a different category of earthbound spirits, pretty much. They are often depicted as beings with um, how shall I put it? An insatiable hunger for material or emotional satisfaction, obsessive compulsive behavior, cravings that are uncontrollable. So, and again, how did I find it out? Because I was thinking, like I said, there are people that I have seen over the years who really struggle with food addictions, and they are able maybe to overcome those addictions for a short period of time, and then they relapse, and we don't know why do they relapse. And for me personally, I find the answer by looking into the energetic field, looking into the spiritual aspects, looking into the subtler bodies of where those energies attach. So those pretas also um, are, they like a kapha constitution because of their natural tendency towards attachment in itself. Kapha people in itself easily get attached to things, to food, to indulgence, or anything. So that was number 4, and I think there's one more. There's the atmas, which are disembodied souls or spirit that seek resolution, um, communication or closure. These are often neutral presences, but they can cause subtle disturbances if unresolved. So what I mean here is, what do I mean by this? Thought patterns. Thought people, we are carrying certain belief systems, certain thought patterns, the way we think about ourselves, our lives. And sometimes we can't shift those thought patterns. And that I found can be categorized under the Atmas, which is the 5th of the category of the Bhutas, which basically means a sense of subtle energy interference or reoccurring destructive thought patterns that are tied to past relationships or past events. So, Pitta types, because of their leadership qualities and karmic responsibilities, often attract the Atmas when it comes to spirit attachments and energetic patterns. So this is roughly, I mean, there's so much more that we could dive into, but before we go into questions, I just wanted to give you a couple of examples of the complexity of, and for me, very, very interesting, what can happen. Okay. I've had one of my first cases that I was working with, this goes back years ago, was somebody who came to me. He was at the time, I think, mid 50s, and he presented and said that there has been something happening in his life. Since then, he has never felt the same. Okay. So, of course, by probing deeper, I found out that he was at the age of 14, he lost his younger brother, 2 years younger brother, who he was very close to, on Christmas Eve through an accident. So basically, now listen to this. This has really opened up my understanding of the complexity of these entities and how they can actually affect our well-being. So what happened there was the elder brother, the one who came and saw me for a healing session, at the time when he received the news that his younger brother died in a car crash about an hour or just 2 hours prior to him receiving the news, he went straight into a shock. And what happened on the other side, the brother who was involved in an accident, and I find this again and again, accidents, the soul is not capable of comprehending the fact that suddenly they are no longer in the physical body, they no longer have a physical body, and they try to sort of find their way through through the now reality. So what happened in that case? The souls switched. So the younger brother who died actually sort of a fractal of him became attached to the older brother, and the older brother basically left his physical body and took hold or got hold of the soul of the younger brother and was floating around and basically felt completely ungrounded, felt completely that he was not himself since this accident. And he was around 50, so let's say about 30, 35 years later. So I had no idea. I went into a session and it took him back right to that accident. I saw what was happening, and actually, as we corrected it, as we sort of allowed the departed soul, his younger brother, to send it back into where he came from, into source or that, and then clearing within his energetic field the shock, everything shifted and changed for him at that particular time. We are carrying ancestral patterns. And I remember one of the sessions where people have carried curses. Now, curses sounds very dramatic, but actually a word curse can also be a curse. I am aware that it's almost time for questions, so give me 1 second. So what I mean here is that if we wish somebody something really bad, that remains as an energetic signature in the quantum field. And that can actually contribute to affecting someone else's well-being, because we know that thoughts just don't disappear. That energy remains in the quantum field. And so what I've found fascinating is that sometimes there are lifetimes that you go back when you look at the past life regression, where within a family setting, certain curses have been put onto a family, and we carry these patterns through generations, okay? And they contribute, for example, that we can never find a healthy, happy relationship, that we struggle financially, that we don't feel safe. So sorry that I've got very involved and engaged in this whole thing, but it just, I want to show you that it's really a fascinating topic. And please, if there are any questions, so let's tackle some of the questions.
Thomas, that was really absolutely fascinating and so much to say, so much. I'll just add one little bit here, that we must remember that the deva are lodged in all the chakras. And if you go to the Muladhara chakra, Ganesh is sitting in there, his metal is lead. And if we say Ganesha's mantra for 108 times, it can help to clear out the Muladhara chakra. That's just my 6 and 8. It's, you know, I think what you've got to say, it demands a huge amount of comment. And we've got a question here about from Linda's iPhone, that what perspective or who is Satan from the Ayurvedic perspective?
We are going into the Rakshasic deities. I believe we are tapping into the realm of the deep Rakshasic deities that are around there. So yeah.
Anybody else who would like to ask a question, could you put your hand up, please? And then you can actually your mute sign off and speak in person. So we're not all spirits.
Thomas, Lynn wants to ask you a question.
Yes,
Lynn,
please.
can you unmute yourself and then you can... Carolina, do we need to take the bit off so that people can unmute themselves?
Sorry, I've done it.
Hi, Lynn.
Hello, Thomas. It's super interesting. Thanks for sharing all of that. I've got about 600 questions. I'll start with the first one. How in your practice do you see or feel or understand these color vibrations and the problems with the color vibrations?
Okay, that's a very good and complex question. So basically, it's a combination of intuiting. It is a combination of conversing with those deities. And this is not deities, oh goodness, forgive me. It's with those entities. Basically, when I go into a session, I feel energetically, sometimes people, and this is where the tricky ones come in, the Rakshasas can be very tricky because they pretend everything is fine and then you don't see them and they don't want to move because energetically, as soon as a client books a session, they know their time is up because somehow they need to shift and to move. So I feel it and then I go and speak to them directly. So basically, I become a hostage negotiator for those demonic entities, and I can see people, as soon as I talk to those, change their personality. Their voices change, their look different, because basically the client that lies on the bed becomes a vessel for those energies that I can speak to, and then helping those demonic energies to remember that in essence they are light. They are not that murky kind of color wherever they are lodged, but they are pure essence and light. And that requires quite a lot of convincing sometimes because they like to hide, especially the higher demonic Rakshasas, they like to hide. It's not easy to find them. But in a conversation, in a consultation, when people present themselves with the symptoms, I already get a very good idea of what's going on in which chakras they are lodged, and then just have a conversation with them. And sometimes Dan is laughing when I'm sitting upstairs and use my affirmative pitta kind of voice to basically tell them that their time is up, if that makes sense.
Thomas, there's Anya is out there. Anya, I don't know if you want to unmute yourself and ask your question, or if you wanted to. Yeah, there we are.
Sorry, hi. I'm sorry, I missed the first half of your presentation, Thomas. I'm really sorry. But what I have heard, I've done lots of work in this area over many years and never had this kind of structure to put it to, but I have worked on various levels with you know, the base level of what I see as entities is just hiding the structures that go way beyond onto various dimensional influences.
Yes.
I would absolutely love to have a chat with you on more in depth, because I've studied Ayurveda at different levels, and this is one area in disease and illness. And as you've said, you know, when people carry curses or they come in with past life ancestral inheritances, when you start to look at people's patterns in this way and you apply it to the demonic side, it's incredible, and you can move so much. But also you have to protect yourself at the same time. So I don't know if that's something that you are open to discussion, and
absolutely.
how we would contact you.
Yeah, just send a message out to Carolina, and then she can put you in touch with me. So that's no problem at all.
That's brilliant.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, it's just, but it's so fascinating, and it's like so moving at the same time, so emotionally fulfilling when you actually have people have those demonic energies, those rakshasic energies, that all of a sudden actually realize that they have been used by their masters, and they remember that actually in essence they are light as well, and help them to move on. And you can see the shift literally in people's faces, in people's voices, as soon as those energies basically are being released and lifted off. And that's why when we look at Ayurveda, we can easily get stuck in focusing on prana, focusing on ojas, focusing on the herbs and lifestyle. But in my personal experience, some of the stuff cannot be shifted unless you really do some of that work that I'm just touching upon here tonight.
That's very important, because in my experience, it's very, if you start just treating at the level of the entities, you personally as a practitioner can be bombarded with the higher levels of dark forces. So one of the things I have done is to actually remain hidden, but to track back to the highest level and then work downwards, and then do what I call a mopping up exercise. So the entities come last in the clearing, but the healing and transformation in people is phenomenal.
Well, thank you very much. We'd like to ask a few more questions. You sound really interesting, Anya, but we've got very limited time. So can I ask Meenakshi, please, to ask your question?
Hi, yeah, I just wanted to ask what your opinion is on if someone's on the spiritual path. So if they tend to sort of operate on a higher frequency, are they less susceptible to these types of effects? Somebody who
Actually, it really depends on what goes on in their awareness. I would say my spontaneous answer would be yes, because their frequency is probably, even though I really do not like to use the words higher and lower and putting labels on it, but their frequency is at a stage where they are less likely to attract some of those, where less likely some of those energies can latch into their energetic field. But in saying that, they may not lodge in the physical, in the 3D physical body, let's say in one of the energy centers, but they might be lurking around in the energy field. Okay, so, and they can get hold of those people when, for example, through now we are tapping into AI, artificial intelligence. So basically, by even a highly spiritual person, what one would call spiritual, can be susceptible, And those energies, basically, they sit in the energetic field, and something like being drawn into social media, for example, can actually open up the gates and can open up the doors for those energies to come in. And also within the spiritual awakened, it's such a loaded word, I really don't like it. People can basically be deceived. So there's a high degree of deception of those rakshasic energies. They may not turn up as dark being. They may take the form, oh, I have had a visit of an archangel such and such coming to me. It was just beautiful. Or I have linked to the Merlin frequency, but very often they are deceptive. So what then happens is that you think you are tapping into this field, and actually, if within your old soul signature, your field isn't clear and clean, these energies can come in, especially presenting themselves in the language that those people that are on a path of awakening can understand. And there's deception in those areas. I just want to quickly really share one of the key things why people who do this work, similar to what I do, feel that they need to protect themselves is because of their own fear. To be quite honest, I'm not afraid. I know that my energetic field is so strong. I have got my team in place, what I call my team, and I know that I'm safe in the space that I do the work. As soon as there's an element of fear, those demonic entities, they smell it directly, and they come in and can actually then drain your energy and cause you distress. Let's put it that way. I wanted to share this. Any other questions, please?
There's John.
Hello, Thomas. Can you hear me?
Yes, John. Hello.
Hello. Just a very quick question. I think you actually might have touched on it just there. The question I was going to ask was, what measures do you take to protect yourself? In terms of what dangers do you think there is to you as with this kind of work?
Protection is my routine, my rhythm, my daily rhythm, my meditation practice. And when I go into a session, I make sure that I'm hydrated, because people forget about hydration. They think they just need to protect themselves and ground themselves. But actually, if you're not hydrated, proper hydration, then you're more likely to sort of carry some of that stuff with you. So stay grounded, hydrate yourself, protect yourself energetically, and just really get into a space where you know you are doing work that can help humanity. And you are, by doing that work, actually safe and protected. As soon as there's an element of fear, I would say don't do the session. If you go into a session where you feel tired, weak, you haven't slept properly, don't do it. Just say, okay, I'm sorry, I'm not in the right space to actually handle this work to your advantage or for the best of your ability, and we have to reschedule. And I rarely do it because I don't know, I just feel safe. I don't have any fear, maybe because some of the experiences that I personally had over the years and learned how to deal with it. John, does that answer your question? Sorry, I keep waffling on.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, thanks. I mean, again, I'm sure you could go on in a lot more detail, but yeah, it's a fascinating topic, and I think like everyone else, I could probably have 100 questions I could ask, but thanks for that. Appreciate it.
Thank you, John. Thank you.
Thank you. Nossa's Clinic, please.
Sorry, my name is Vanessa.
Hi, Vanessa.
Hi, Thomas. I was late to the lecture, but I really love your topic and everything you're sharing. I also work with Ayurveda and with shamanic practices, so I merge both, especially with ayahuasca,
Yeah.
and ayahuasca and shamanism work completely at that energetic level, and it's all about clearing all those energies. So this topic is fascinating for me. And I don't have a very big question. I mean, I just want to have you more to teach us everything you've been saying. And I don't know if there is any advice or any place you recommend if you want to study further what you have learned, or
Yeah, I'm happy to share that the training that I got was from Laura Whitworth, Soul-Centered Healing Hypnosis. And what I like about her technique is there are 3 components to this, okay? There is past life regression, first of all, entity removal, past life regression, and source connection. So very often people within the quantum healing field, they want answers to some of the questions, and they use technologies and techniques and what you call it, modalities that claim to be able to help you tap into your higher self. Let's put it simple, tap into your higher self. But the truth is, if you are not clearing your field prior to that, you attract those energies, those denser energies. They infiltrate your energetic signature and they muddy the water. So the answers that you get, that you might seek in any of those sessions, is not pure and they can be misleading. So I found Laura's Soul-Centered Healing Hypnosis program combined with my passion for frequencies. This is where my own spin to this whole thing comes in, combined with my understanding of the Ayurveda and the doshas in particular, and my training as a yoga teacher comes in with regards to the chakras, the colors. It's just fascinating, and I'm very, very grateful to be able to do this work. But I do feel it needs more and more practitioner to actually share the different modalities and make people aware. We don't need to be afraid of entities. We all move around and we constantly face attachments, energetic attachments, but it's about what you do with them. How do you work with them? And I remember when years ago, Sue has asked me to help clearing one of her relatives' house. And it was like hilarious because we could feel, it was spooky and hilarious at the same time. We could feel some of the deceased energy floating around and sharing their anger because we started to clean up the physical space. So there are so many different dimensions to this. Thinking about your home, thinking about where you move in, thinking about, I mean, we could go into anything, thinking about ley lines, thinking about portals, thinking about places that are in the neighborhood, for example, that can affect the way of how we think and how we feel. Thinking about your sleeping place. If there is a portal where you sleep, no matter what you do, you can take any kind of herb, people will still not be able to actually sleep because it's an open portal, an open energy field for those denser energies to come in and actually muddle around and sort of play with you in dream state. So again, long-winded answer to a simple question. Yes,
So
there are modalities out there.
you've earned your place in the history of Ayurveda because remember, all aspects are relevant. In fact, Charaka says that, you should be interested in everything and it does evolve, and that should be included, the Western perspective, in your healing modalities. So I'm really grateful to you, and I'm sure everybody else has been as fascinated as I have been. And thank you so much. And perhaps you might come again and give us a bit more of the lowdown. Was absolutely lovely. So thank you so much. And
Thank you.
also,
Yeah.
all of you here is an absolute blessing. So thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Tomaz. Thank you. It's fascinating.
Thank you for allowing me to just share what I'm very passionate about. And like I said, it's time that we as practitioners, as healers, take responsibility to actually look beyond what has been known to help people in the past 20 to 30 years. Because I believe this is just, I feel that moving forward in the future, it's the energy work, it's the energetic medicine that actually we are tapping into, and we are at the forefront. And I came from a situation where I remember the Berlin Wall came down, and then I went to East Germany and I organized my first talk on Ayurveda. This was 1989. I remember it vividly in November. It was such a great day. I went to East Germany. I opened up a meditation center. I was organizing a talk about Ayurveda and meditation. And the talk was basically canceled because of church. Anyway, there was a big article. This was the first article that was published in the papers about me, which read, "Witches, Gurus, Ghosts, Teachers of Yoga, Ayurveda, and Meditation." There was a big picture of my much younger face at the time in the newspaper with the headlines, "This is what you can contract if you get engaged with Ayurveda. Internal bleedings, mental confusion, sexual disorientation." I'm not making it up. It was quite heavy. So it is our responsibility to take the witch hunting out of these modalities, because otherwise I don't think we can consider ourselves being holistic practitioner. We don't need to do it. You either have the calling or not, but at least as a practitioner to have the understanding that these aspects of our existence can influence our well-being. And then if you don't feel like this is something for you, basically send it to someone who actually feels passionate about working with this. With this, again, a massive thank you to Sue, Carolina, and the entire APA committee for allowing me to come on and chat, and forgive my intensity. That's my pitta. And when the wind blows in the fire, Tomaz is unstoppable. Thank you so much, everybody.
Okay, I just want to say thank you, Tomaz, and thank you everyone for being on here. It's great. We do have to kind of stop him in the end, but you will be seeing Tomaz again, because I think, Tomaz, you're hosting Sonia Shah Williams in January, are you? So you're going to be the host for that?
I think so.
And that's early on in January. Somebody tell me when on here.
22nd, I think.
Yeah. And so we've got 2 webinars in January, so please join us. Somebody help me. What's the date of the other one, please?
29th.
29th. So they're quite close together, and then we're going to have Lynn and Akansha. So looking forward to that. And Sonia's with us this evening, so she knows what the competition's like now. So
I've got to get prepping.
yeah, you've got to get prepping now. So thank you, everybody. Happy New Year. I know it's early, but we may as well say it now. Happy Christmas. Thank you, Tomaz. I hope the ghosts leave you alone for a festive season. You know, everybody have a great, happy Christmas and a wonderful.
Thank you, and you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.